Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. I'm going to discuss a term today which you may have heard around, and this is the term Web3. It is probably, the broad term that most accurately describes what is taking place in the world of crypto. However, I think the term crypto and cryptocurrency is somewhat inaccurate. I've referred to it as decentralized ledger technology to be a bit more accurate, but actually Web3 is a better, more accurate term. And what I've said for a while is if you care about freedom in the world, you should definitely care about crypto. And I would expand that to say if you care about freedom in the world, you should care about Web3. So I'm going to talk today about what is Web3 and why should you care? And why is it, potentially one of the biggest technological revolutions in the last, long time. So let's dive in. Before we do, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the all notification bell. Thank you for supporting us. If you'd like more videos like this, please check them out. If you'd like help with relocating abroad, getting residency, citizenships, investing abroad, doing banking abroad, etc., please reach out to us. You can book a call, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer, link in the description below, or send a message through our websites, offshorecitizen.net and offshorecapitalist.com. Okay, so Web3. I'm super big on Web3. Essentially, in my view, the two technologies I intend to spend most of my foreseeable life on will probably be Web3 technologies and some things to do with health. So Web3, what is it all about? Maybe in order to understand it, we need to contrast it with Web2. And it's worth noting that there's some criticism as to why do we need Web3? A lot of what they're doing with Web3 technology, which is loosely speaking all the cryptocurrency stuff out there, could be achieved to some extent faster, easier, less expensive using Web2 technology. And so is there really a technological breakthrough? What is that technological breakthrough? And you'll hear people talk about openness, open source, composability, etc. I think these are probably not very good, accurate depictions of Web3. So I had quite a bit of hard time for a while trying to conceptualize what is it really about this that is so important, so necessary. And I think it was best described by Gavin Wood, who was the CTO for Ethereum. He is the founder of Polkadot. Really great technical guy, wrote the original yellow paper for Ethereum, did a lot of the initial coding. And he said in 2014, in a kind of post-Snowden world, what we realize is that we cannot trust any institution. And honestly, this is one of the big concerns I have in the world today. One of the things that terrified me, say, about Canada was seeing the Canadian response across the public over the last couple of years was an alarming degree of institutional trust. And I think this is deeply naive. I think in general, you should not operate based on the premise that you can trust any institution, be it government, media, academic, corporations. You can't trust any of them by default. Which is weird because the Western approach is kind of trust by default, whereas some other cultures tend to be more distrust by default. I don't think the idea is that you need to distrust by default, but I don't think that you should rely on the idea that you can trust them. And Gavin did a recent interview where he kind of described if you're sitting on the couch with your uncle and you want to give your uncle money, it used to be you just reach into your pocket, take some money, give it to them. And today, you need to trust your bank in order to be able to do that. And he said, you shouldn't need to trust your bank in order to give money to your uncle. And in fact, probably you shouldn't need to trust your bank to give money to anybody. But we can widen this up and we can say, let's look at something different, such as communication, right? Again, you're sitting here, you communicate with somebody, no big deal. Why should you need to trust Mark Zuckerberg in order to communicate with your friends, your family, whoever else? Right? That should not be necessary. And so Web3 technology is technology built on the ethos that you cannot trust any centralized authority, any institution. And because of this, the technology needs to be designed in a different manner, a manner that has no single point of failure, that is permissionless and open. Well, it doesn't actually technically have to be permissionless. It could be permissioned. But it ultimately has no reliance on any central authority that is censoring. Now, it's worth understanding that the world of cryptocurrency, which is kind of sprung up in this Web3 ecosystem or this Web3 garden, mostly deeply fails at achieving that. Okay, most of it, some of it, you have a situation of progressive decentralization. So you'll have technologies that are definitely far from fully decentralized or decentralized to a sufficient degree that they would be, say, censorship resistant. But the idea is to move in that direction. Okay, very, very important. And I think just what we're seeing more and more is two different things happening in the world. One is groups just censor, right? And by censoring, I'm not necessarily saying preventing free speech. I'm saying decide based on their decision what it is that can and cannot happen. And the question is, who are they, right? Why should I rely on somebody else to decide? Why don't I get to decide? What makes somebody at Facebook or Google or Twitter or wherever else the authority who gets to decide? My bank, why do they get to decide? Why not me, right? And what we've had is over time, we've had these large organizations that have scaled up. And so there's relatively few of them. And then the second order consequence of this is governments realize that they can essentially bypass the law by going through private organizations. Because while it might be true that, say, freedom of speech is enshrined in law and governments are not allowed to interfere with your freedom of speech, using speech as an example, the private organizations can, right? You as a private organization have the power to kick somebody off your plane, to prevent them from being in your restaurant, etc. And so what can the governments do? The governments can put pressure on the organizations and enforce this. And so they get their way kind of indirectly. And that's really bad. It's not a good thing for the world, as far as I'm concerned anyway. And so we want to build technology that the base layer of technology is neutral. It takes no sides. It doesn't do something. And then people have the ability to build on top of it and do what they like. And then all the squabbles, the disagreements, et cetera, can be sorted out beyond there. So I've had some people who will make comments that are sort of negative against cryptocurrency. And I think the language is improper because it has the word currency in it. And this really comes out of Bitcoin, the Bitcoin white paper, which is the idea of having digital cash. Most cryptocurrencies have nothing to do with currency, okay? I mean, NFTs are supposed to have to do with art. Really, they don't have anything to do with art either, intrinsically. But so what we're talking about really is technology that at its core is censorship resistant, that it's open, that it's permissionless, that it's decentralized, that you don't rely on any central authority. At the core of this is consensus technology, so the ability to have ways of, in the event that there are disputes, resolving those disputes and coming to what is the truth. And so you have things like Byzantine fault tolerance and the Byzantine generals problem and all this kind of, lots of technical babble for people who don't understand it. This being said, I think it's really important, right? Storing your information, communicating, transferring value, building up functionality that can be shared with other people, deciding what it is that you can contribute to or not. This is really, really important. And the underpinning technologies are these Web3 technologies. And the interesting thing is these have new economies built on top of them. Because, for example, if I create a decentralized application on top of some sort of a decentralized network, such as Ethereum or Avalanche or Phantom or whatever else, then it might be that anyone can run that application without me, right? So how do I make it profitable? How do I engage? Well, this is where token economies come in. This is where you can build all sorts of fancy game theory and you reinvent organizations. I did a while ago a video on DAOs and how revolutionary DAOs are and how this is kind of a future. So very, very interesting. I think it's something that everyone who cares about these things should get into. If you're concerned about your autonomy as an individual, this is really important. There was a great interview Michael Saylor did recently with the Patrick Bet-David podcast, and you can check them out at Valuetainment. And he was commenting on how Bitcoin is the first time that you can have your wealth in your head, essentially in the form of the secret phrase that you have memorized. And nobody can take it from you. It's unconfiscatable. It's yours. So somebody can hold a gun to your head and they can say, give this to me. And they can destroy that wealth by killing you, but they can't take it by killing you. And this changes the negotiating relationship and changes the entire context of how things play out in the world. I think it's just really important technology to what we're going to build in the future. And there's undeniably all sorts of challenges that are going to come with that. There are ways in which it can be abused, etc. and undeniably it will create, new conflicts. But on the other side, or let's put it this way, the alternative, which we're headed towards, I just don't think is a reasonable option. So I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you think? Put it in the comments below. I'm going to look forward to seeing you on the next video.